If I asked you to tell me what bridge this is, 99% of you would be able to tell me that this is the Golden Gate Bridge. But how did we get to this magnificent bridge? In order to understand how we got to the bridges we see today, we need to start from the very beginning. The very first bridges were natural bridges. This could range from a log pushed over to cross a river or stones laid in a riverbed. One of the oldest types of these bridges from the Indian epic literature called Ramayana is believed to be the Ram Setu Bridge, or Adam's Bridge, spanning the distance between India and Sri Lanka, built by the mythological army of Sri Rama. You can see this for yourself by going to this location on Google Maps. Some of the earliest theorized bridge builders were the ancient civilizations of Assyria and Egypt. One of the earliest corbel arch bridges is thought to have been built between 3200 and 4200 BC in Egypt. The ancient civilization of Babylon is also theorized to have built an arch bridge made out of bricks spanning the Euphrates River around 4000 BC. Most of the evidence of early bridges comes from writings about military victories, and most of them are no longer standing. The oldest bridge that is still being used today is the Archidiko Bridge located in Greece and was built during the Mycenaean period around 1300 BC. Fast forward to 783 BC to one of the earliest timber bridges built as described in the writings of Herodotus about the ancient city of Babylon. The bridge is described in the writings as, about the middle of the city, she built a bridge with the stones which had been dug up, binding them together with iron and lead. She laid across it square-hewn logs each morning, whereon the Babylonians crossed, but these logs were taken away for the night. In essence, this bridge had stone pillars with a wooden bridge deck. You know, it wouldn't be a bridge history video if we didn't start talking about probably one of the greatest bridge building societies of ancient times, the Romans. The Romans added the true semicircular arch design around 500 to 600 BC, many of which are still standing to this day. Built between 103 and 104 AD, the Alcantara Bridge, which spans the Tagus River in Spain, has stood the test of time for 1900 years. Another famous Roman bridge built in 134 AD is the Ponte Sant'Angelo Bridge in Rome, Italy, that is still in use today. This bridge spans the Tiber River to connect the city center of Rome to the newly constructed mausoleum at the time, which is now known as Castel Sant'Angelo. This bridge can also be seen in video games such as Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The ancient Romans built many more bridges and aqueducts that I cannot possibly cover in this video, but if you'd like for me to cover it more in depth in another video, let me know down in the comments below. Alright, let's fast forward to the Dark Ages between 500 and 1100 AD. The art of bridge building declined and led to many inferior bridges that did not stand the test of time. Legend says that in the 11th and 12th centuries, a religious group known as the Bridge Building Brotherhood started building bridges across France. The most famous being the Pont Saint-Benezet Bridge built by Saint Benezet in Avignon in southern France that unfortunately did not stand the test of time. The first rendition of this bridge was built between 1177 and 1185 out of wood. It was destroyed during the siege of Avignon by Louis VIII of France in 1226 and was rebuilt in 1234 entirely out of stone. Saint Benezet claimed that he was divinely commanded by Jesus in a vision to build the bridge at a point where the force of the Rhone River was too great that even Roman engineers refused to build it. As the bridge was being built, they overcame many obstacles miraculously and is allegedly said to have caused 18 miraculous healings. Wealthy patrons, believing that this was the work of God, formed the bridge building brotherhood mentioned earlier to help fund this endeavor. Today, only 4 arches of the bridge remain due to repeated flooding that collapsed multiple sections of the bridge. It is now classified as a World Heritage Site along with nearby landmarks due to its leading role in the papacy during the 14th and 15th centuries. Moving forward in time to 1377 with the construction of the Trezzo Celada Bridge in Lombardy, Italy. This bridge broke the record with the largest span in a bridge and held onto that record for 500 years. This bridge spanned 75 meters or about 246 feet. The bridge unfortunately only lasted 40 years as it was intentionally destroyed when the city came under siege in 1416. The lower parts of the abutments are all that remains today. Another significant bridge completed in 1402 is the Charles Bridge in Prague, Czech Republic. This was the only way to cross the Vltava River until 1841 and was an important trade route between Eastern and Western Europe. Many bridges were built during the Renaissance era between 1450 and 1650 AD. In 1715, France realized that their public bridges were in terrible condition and needed to be rebuilt. They started the first Department of Bridges and Roads and followed that up with the National School of Bridges and Roads in 1747 to educate students on civil engineering. Initially, 50 students self-taught themselves geometry, algebra, mechanics, and hydraulics. They spent around 4 to 12 years completing their training and visiting sites with cooperation from scientists and engineers of the time. The Department of Bridges and Roads helped rebuild the road network of France during the First French Empire run by Napoleon I, and used this experience to shape its training methods for the school. Fast forward to 1776, and the first ever bridge made entirely out of iron was constructed. This bridge is the Coal-Brookdale Bridge, also known as the Iron Bridge, which crosses the River Severn in Shropshire, England. This bridge was the first major bridge to be made out of cast iron and is celebrated as a symbol of the Industrial Revolution. As you have seen so far, arch bridges have been constructed throughout history, with the most famous being the Roman bridges and aqueducts. All of these bridges were constructed of stone. Modern arch bridges are constructed of either steel, concrete, or laminated wood, which are significantly lighter than stone. The first arch bridge made out of iron is the Coal-Brookdale Bridge mentioned earlier in the video. Today, the longest arch bridge is the Pingnan Third Bridge in China, which was constructed in 2020. This bridge has a main span of 575 meters or 1,886 feet. One of the most iconic and recognizable bridge type is the truss bridge. It is theorized that wooden truss bridges have existed since around 2500 BC. Some of the earliest truss bridges that we know of is the Chapel Bridge of Lucerne, built around 1365, which is a covered wooden bridge with paintings on the interior triangular frames. It wasn't until the early 1800s, with the development of the steam locomotive, that the truss bridge became popular. North American carpenters and architects further developed the truss to simplify the design and replace the heavy timbers with lighter pieces. With the use of locomotives, iron was used for truss bridges to carry the extremely heavy loads from the trains. Soon after, the iron was replaced with steel for all members of the truss, which also removed the need for the bridge to be covered. Today's steel truss bridges are used in highway systems around the world. The longest continuous truss bridge was built in 1991. This bridge is the Ikitsuke Bridge in Japan, with a main span length of 400 meters or 1,312 feet. The longest truss bridge in America is the Astoria Bridge, which was built in 1966. This truss bridge spans the Columbia River between Oregon and Washington. The main span length is 376 meters or 1,233 feet, with a total bridge length of 6,545 meters or 21,474 feet, making it the second longest continuous truss bridge in the world. One of the earliest known beam bridges was built by the ancient Romans in the 7th century BC. This bridge was known as Pons Sublicius, which literally means bridge made of wooden beams. Modern beam bridges are one of the most commonly built bridges, as it is one of the simplest bridges to design. A beam bridge consists of the substructure, which includes the abutments and piers, the beams that sit on top of the substructure, and the deck that sits on top of the beams. Steel or reinforced concrete are commonly used in the design of these bridges. While each span of a beam bridge is relatively short, the longest bridge in the United States is a beam bridge located in Louisiana. This bridge is called the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, completed in 1956 for one side and 1969 for the other side. Both bridges contain thousands of spans with a total length of 39 kilometers or approximately 24 miles. The longest bridge in the world is a beam bridge, and it is the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge in China with a total length of 164.8 kilometers or 102 miles long. Now let's talk about suspension bridges, but we must jump back into the past. Suspension bridges have been built throughout history in China, Japan, India, Mexico, South America, and more, using twisted vines to attach the bridge to nearby trees. It wasn't until 1801 that the first modern suspension bridge was built between Uniontown and Greensburg, Pennsylvania, with a span of 21 meters or 69 feet. The first major suspension bridge was built in Wales, connecting the mainland to the island of Anglesey in 1826 with a span of 176 meters or about 577 feet, and was made out of wrought iron chains for the original suspension cables. In 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City opened and broke the record for the longest span in the world at 488 meters or 1,600 feet. It was also the first steel suspension bridge, and it featured towers that made it the tallest structure in the Western Hemisphere at the time. In 1937, the longest and tallest suspension bridge in the world opened up, which is of course the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, California. The main span of the bridge is a whopping 1,280 meters or 4,280 feet, with a height of 227 meters or 746 feet, and a total length of 2,737 meters or 8,981 feet. It held the record as the longest suspension bridge in the world until 1964. Today, the longest suspension bridge in the world, built in 2022, is the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge in Turkey, with a main span length of 2,023 meters or 6,637 feet, with a height of 334 meters or 1,096 feet, and a total length of 4,608 meters or 15,118 feet. Similar to the suspension bridge is the cable-stayed bridge. The main difference between the two is that in the suspension bridge, the cables supporting the bridge deck connect to the main cables that are connected to towers, while the cable-stayed bridge has cables that directly attach from the tower to the bridge deck. The earliest known design of the cable-stayed bridge dates back to 1595, but one of the earliest cable-stayed bridges constructed was the August 1817 footbridge, Dryburgh Abbey Bridge in Scotland. This bridge unfortunately collapsed in January of 1818 due to high wind. It was redesigned and built, but collapsed again in 1838. Today, the longest cable-stayed bridge is the Russky Bridge in Russia, with a span length of 1,104 meters, or 3,622 feet, and was built in 2012. In summary, bridges have been around since the beginning of time. Bridges have changed dramatically over the centuries, with some bridges surviving the test of time. As we keep developing as a society, we will see our bridges get longer and longer. Thank you for watching until the end. My plans for this channel include talking about roads, as well as going more in depth with bridges. The first bridge that I would like to go more in depth with is, of course, the iconic Golden Gate Bridge. If you would like me to cover a specific bridge, let me know down in the comments. Thanks again for watching.